afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are, all over the world. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon to bring our executive wellness podcast to you. Uh, Today is going to be a wonderful day. We trust that everybody is seated to hear about how to handle stress in the workplace. As you know, everybody at one time or the other has experienced this occupational disease that we call stress. But today we want to shed light on it, to understand it more, and to know how to handle it if we are ever uh, able to confront it in our workplace. I believe that today's podcast is going to be very beneficiary to those who are in the working class, uh, irrespective of the field that you belong, whether you are a doctor, you are a lecturer, you are a banker, you are a Supreme Court justice or judge, or whatever profession that you find yourself. This is going to be uh, a podcast that will be very helpful to you. So, we want to talk about how to handle stress in the workplace. And believe me or not, and you better believe me, we cannot effectively talk about stress in the workplace without talking extensively about burnout. Uh, in my own life, on few occasions, I've experienced burnout, and I must tell you, it's not a fun thing to experience. Uh, I've had occasion whereby I I was so disgusted with work that I did not even want to open my computer. I did not want to even open any emails. I did not even want to hear anybody talk anything to me about work, because at that particular point in time, all I just need is some space to be able to refresh myself and to be able to refresh myself and get back to my best self. Uh, at that particular point in time, that is all that I needed. And I'm sure some people can relate with that. So today, uh, we're going to talk about burnout, because burnout is an integral part of stress. Burnout undoubtedly is one of the most leading causes of mental health breakdown in the world today. And you better believe that. Many people who are suffering from mental health breakdown are suffering. I'm not saying every one of them, but majority are suffering from mental health breakdown due to stress or burnout. And that is why we are taking time out to tackle this disease. It is not a disease in the sense that it has a virus, it has some bacteria that can destroy your immune system, but much more than destroying your immune system like virus or bacteria. Stress or burnout is an occupational disease. I like to stress it that way. This is something that makes you uncomfortable. it makes things not to be in their right place within your body system. A kind of disorganization, disorientation in the way your body makeup is conjured. So, in that sense, it can lead to severe mental health breakdown if it is left unchecked. Now, according to an article in Harvard Business Review titled Burnout is About Your Workplace, Not Your People by Jennifer Moores. Moores, in her thesis, identifies burnout as a global epidemic, which the World Health Organization, that is the WHO, has now officially recognized as a killer occupational disease. Can you imagine? And this recognition is very recent. It's not something that they have discovered a long time ago. It is still very recent, just about 5 or 6 years ago. That is when they decided that we are not going to continue to debate about whether stress is an occupational hazard or whatever some other people may think of it. But it was just about 5 or 6 years ago that they decided that they were going to categorize it as a killer occupational disease. Like I said, I love to stress it that way. In that way, it makes more sense to me. So let's talk about the origin of burnout and its declaration as an occupational disease. Now, the term burnout originated in the 1970s, and for the past 50 years, for those of us who are born in the 70s, that's almost 50 years ago. For the past 50 years, the community has argued, that is the health community, has argued about how to define stress or burnout. But however, in May 2019, World Health Organization decided to include burnout in its international classification of disease, which they commonly call ICD-11. And in that edition of ICD, they decided to include burnouts as a killer occupational disease. Initially, when they made this decision, the public thought they were going to consider it as a medical condition, because when people heard that it is a disease, so their mind went straight to a medical condition. But the World Health Organization quickly decided to make some clarification and decided to do a little revision on their international classification of disease. In the revised edition of ICD-11, they decided to clarify that burnout is not a medical condition, but however, is an occupational disease. So now let's talk about the burden of the management of burnout. Where does the burden lies? Now, initially, people think when you are stressed out at work, when you are experiencing burnout, what people think before now is that it is your problem. Even Even if you have worked all your life for a particular organization, they don't see it as their problem. They see it as your problem. So to that end, uh, people were put under that pressure of having to take care of themselves when they go through stress or when they experience burnout in the workplace. But however, with the recent declaration of World Health Organization uh, declaring burnout as an occupational disease, now we are now beginning to see the burden of the management of burnout now shifting away from the workforce members to that of the corporate organization. Now, if you are a member of a corporate executive listening to me, I'd like you to understand that when people are going through stress or when they are experiencing burnouts as a result of working for your organization, it is your responsibility as a corporate body to ensure the safety and the and to ensure that that person is able to get back to his or her best self. It is the responsibility of the organization to ensure that. So, and that is why the article of Jennifer Moss is very, very important. And you can see from the title of that article, it says burnout is about your workplace. So it's not your problem as an individual. It's about your workplace and not your people. So Jennifer Moss was practically speaking to the executive leaders in the organization that when you see burnout happening to people, it's not your people's problem. It is about your workplace. There are things you need to put in place in the workplace to be able to address this killer occupational disease that has the capacity to truncate humans' destiny. Now, I like to emphasize that when stress or burnout, I may choose to use them interchangeably, when stress or burnout is not attended to professionally, I'd like you to know that it can lead to anxiety and depression in the life of the sufferers. And that is something that calls for sober reflection as we go through this podcast together. Stress, initially, it may look ordinary, it may look like it is normal, but it is not. Over time, when somebody continue to experience persistent burnout, persistence, intense pressure under stress, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to depression. Now, for you to understand what I am talking about, let's try to connect it to the consequences of untreated stress and burnout in the workplace. What are the likely consequences of it? Now, the only way I think you can better understand the consequence is to understand it in terms of financial costs that it brings to the individual, not only to the individual, to the organization, not only to the organization, even to the nation. Everybody loses. It's not just the individual that loses. The organization loses, the state, the nation, or the country also loses when somebody is going through stress or experiencing burnout. Now let's try to understand the real financial costs of depression and anxiety. Then you can then be able to put what I'm saying into a proper context. Now, worldwide, about 650 million people are suffering from depression and anxiety. That's a lot. That's a lot of figure. I'm not just talking about 615 people. I'm talking about 615 millions out of about 10 billion people on the planet Earth today. That's roughly about how many percentage are we going to call that? That's about 6%, even more than 6% of the world population are suffering from depression and anxiety. And this statistics is according to World Health Organization recent study. And now this is the cost of it. Now, because of this huge number of people suffering from depression all over the world, now the financial costs in dollars is about 1 trillion in lost productivity each year. I'm not saying every decade or in a lifetime. I'm not just talking about what has been lost so far. Each year, that is how much we lose in the world when people go through depression or anxiety, which are occasionally or sometimes can be engineered by burnout or stress. We lose $1 trillion each year. Can you imagine that? And that is how devastating unmanaged stress or burnout can be in the workplace. Now, let's also talk about organizations who do not do anything to support their workers when they are going through stress and burnout. Now, organizations without structures to support the well-being of their workforce usually experience higher turnover rates in their organization or in their workplace. Sometimes a good measure, a sensible measure of turnover is good for every organization. For every organization. But when the turnover rate becomes so high and becomes so frequent, then it can have a negative impact on the organization. So when an organization do not have a well-defined structure of how to take care of their workers, it can lead to high turnover rates. It can lead to lower productivity. So it's not just the worker that is losing. The organization is also bleeding financially. It can lead to lower productivity. It can lead to higher healthcare costs. Because something you could have used, let's say, $10 to take care of, if you leave it without doing what you are supposed to do at that particular point in time, you can end up spending $1,000. I'm just using that for you to understand the difference between when you take a proactive action and when you refuse to take a proactive action. The cost can be very significant. And that is what we're trying to emphasize here. Now, this data that I've just rolled out about high turnover, lower productivity, higher healthcare costs, this is according to the research conducted by the American Psychological Association. Now, this is what Jennifer Moss tried to assert. She said that workplace-related stress is estimated to cost the U.S. economy more than 500 billion dollars. That is what is costing the U.S. economy. We are not even talking about the other country. You know, we said worldwide is costing us about $1 trillion annually. But in US now, we are talking about US. Work-related stress is estimated to be costing the US economy more than $500 billion. And each year, very sadly, is costing $550 million in work days that are lost due to stress on the job. That is what they lose. On every work days that people are absent from work because of stress-related requests, that is what it amounts to in the US. Now, another study by American Psychological Association also claims that burnout employees are 2.6 times as likely to be actively seeking other employment. They need a fresh air. They want to experience something new. And the reason why people jump from job to job is not because they like it's not because of course you can say it's because the grass is greener on the other side, but it's because of the stress they are experiencing in their current job. That is not to say that when they move to the other job, they are not going to encounter the same stress, but at least to escape the present and the current stress they are going through, the choice that is left for them is to seek other employment elsewhere. And of course, 63% are more likely to take sick day. And then 23% more likely to visit the emergency room. Now, I needed to roll out some of this data so that you will understand the grave danger of stress and burnouts in the workplace. Now, let's talk about some of the most vulnerable vocational group to burnout. Now, unfortunately and surprisingly, the people that take care of every one of us, talking about the doctors and the nurses, are some of the most vulnerable to burnout. And that is why every one of us should be very, we should be very considerate. We should be very patient when we have the opportunity to visit. It's not an opportunity. When we have occasion to see doctors and nurses in the hospital, they are really doing a lot. And the work they are doing is bringing a lot of stress and burnout. It's causing them to experience burnout like no man's business on the job. And the repercussion of this vocational group is that it can mean both life and death for them. And that is why the suicide rate among caregivers is so alarming and is significantly higher than the general public, because Can you imagine you that is taking care of other people? When you get problem, who is going to take care of you? That is what the situation is. And that is why we have to be very, very tender-hearted when we are dealing with our doctors and nurses, because they are already doing a lot. The workload that is on them, uh, sometimes for example, for a psychiatrist, for example, the ratio of the number of people they have to attend to per one psychiatric doctor is so alarming, particularly in countries like Nigeria. It's so alarming, and that brings a lot of stress upon them and upon the work that they are doing. Now, why do people experience burnout? Why do people experience burnout? And I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why people experience burnout. I'm going to tell you about the top 5 reasons why people experience burnout. Number one, when people uh, when people uh, are unfairly treated at work. Unfair treatment at work is one of the top reasons why people experience burnouts. I have seen people who have been who have not been promoted based on the fact that they came from a particular race, or because they are of particular gender. I have seen people who have been who have been who have been treated very badly in the workplace based because on the way they speak, their accent, because they are not speaking like the the other people, because they have a particular accent in the way they speak. Because of that, they are discriminated at work. All these things can bring stress on people, and it can make people to experience burnouts, because you tell yourself, what is the point of working? You're just working. Nobody's there to recognize the effort you are putting in, the input you are bringing to the organization. Nobody is there to encourage you, to motivate you to be able to do more. Because of that, people can experience burnout. Another reason why people experience burnout is because of unmanageable workload. This is very serious. When you overload or overwork a particular employee, you put too much workload on a particular employee, over time, the person is going to experience a burnout. And the only way to do that is to help spread the workload of what needs to be done in the workplace and share it among other employees, so that one person is not doing the job of 10 or 20 people. There are some organizations where their workers, each individual is doing what 20 people are supposed to be doing. That is not good. That is not fair. That is going to cause burnout for them. And so we want to be we want to put human face in our leadership style by helping people to manage their workload by not overloading them with work. Another thing that can cause burnout in the workplace is lack of clarity. Lack of clarity is another thing that can cause uh, is lack of clarity is another thing that can cause burnout in the workplace. When an employee does not know where the organization is going or what her contribution to the organization, uh, what the impact of the contribution that he or she is making to the organization, when she doesn't understand it, of what significance is my impact to this organization, or is my contribution to this organization, it can cause a, an employee to experience burnout. Everybody wants to know where our input is leading to. And when people don't get clarity on that, it can bring unnecessary burden and stress on them. Another thing that can cause burnout is lack of communication and support from the manager or from their manager. Of course, when you have a manager who is not communicating well or who cannot communicate very well, it can cause employee to experience burnout in the workplace. Or when you are not receiving enough support to be able to do your job very well in the workplace, it can also bring stress on people. It can make people to experience burnout. Another reason why people experience burnout in the workplace is unreasonable time pressure. When there is unreasonable deadline for an assignment or a project by your immediate supervisor or manager, when you are told to do something, to fulfill an assignment or to fulfill a task or to complete a project with a specific deadline that is unreasonable, that can bring a significant stress on people, and it can make people to experience burnout. Now let's talk about how to handle some of this stress in the workplace. What are the coping strategies? What are the coping skills that we need to develop to be able to handle stress in the workplace? Now, in talking about our strategy for coping with stress in the workplace, I'm going to look at it from two perspectives. I'm going to look at it from the personal level, what you need to do as an individual, and then what the organization needs to do as a corporate body. Number one, let's talk about the personal level, what you need to do as an individual if you want to develop some coping strategies to handle stress in the workplace. Number one, you need to prioritize your task and break them down into manageable units. Don't just muddle things up. You have to be able to prioritize them and do the ones that are most necessary first. You have to do the ones that are most important first. Then you now go to the next one that is most important, and the ones that are necessary, you can either delegate or push them down the timeline so that you are not putting too much on the table for you to do. So you need to prioritize your tasks and break them down into manageable units. Number two, you need to learn how to take breaks. Unfortunately, this is what many people are not able to do. Many people are not able to do, they are not able to take break at work. I have seen people who are working who doesn't take time out in their work. Not only time out, even in a particular day you are working, you have to learn how to step back a little bit. Many breaks are very necessary, and that is why in every sensible organization there is always a time for you to go on break. It could be 30 minutes for some organization. I don't know if there is any organization that gives up to 1 hour, but most organizations will give you about 30 minutes for you to have a time to relax and then come back to work and then continue with your work. So you need to take those moments very seriously. Another thing you need to do to be able to cope with stress in the workplace is that you need to stay organized. Don't be disorganized. You need to stay organized. Organize yourself, organize your task, organize yourself in such a way you know when to send emails, you know when to read emails. Don't let your emails accumulate. If you allow, for example, your emails to accumulate, and when you don't, when you don't organize yourself in such a way that you have a time you deal with them, and you open your email box one day and you see 1,000 email messages, where do you want to start? How are you going to handle that? And that is why it is always important to organize yourself, to stay organized, because it helps you to tackle your task as at when they are required. Another thing you need to do on a personal level to cope with stress in the workplace is to learn how to communicate with your team members. Lack of communication can cause disruption in our work. It can cause disruption in the way we function in the workplace. So you want to learn how to collaborate with your coworkers, how to ask for help when there is need for you to ask for it, and then how to delegate if it is necessary, how to ask people to help you do certain assignments so as to less the burden that you have on yourself. Another thing is that you need to limit technology use. I'm sure in this generation, we're all guilty of it. I saw something very funny sometimes ago, just recently, I think this past week or last week, I can't really remember now. And the joke says that when in the days that telephone has wire, he said we were all free. But the day the phone got its freedom from wire, that is when the entire humanity has become bound. We have practically put ourselves under bondage since the day telephone decided not to have wire again. So maybe, and I know we cannot go back to that era again, but then the most important point to take away is that if you want to be effective at work, you have to limit the way you use technology. You have to limit the way you go to your favorite social media platform, either Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I know some of these platforms are very necessary and they have become an essential part of our life. But then we have to be very smart in the way we utilize them. Another thing you need to do to be able to cope with stress in the workplace is that you need to stay hydrated and energized. If there is need for you to take water, make sure you take water. Most organizations will always provide water, cold or hot water. Some organizations will even provide coffee or tea in the workplace for you. These are to make you feel to stay hydrated and energized for the day. And then another thing you need to do to cope with stress in the workplace is that you need to learn how to take time off. I spoke about taking breaks. That is when you are even at work. But this time it is complete. getting yourself away from the work. That is what we are talking about here. Complete is what we are talking about here is to stay away at work completely. And this will help you to rejuvenate, uh, to renew yourself, to renew your energy, and to become even better and sharper at work. Some people don't take time off. I tell you, if you are in the business of not taking time out at work, you are doing your body system a great disservice. You may think you are functioning, you are not really functioning well. The best way for you to really function very well is to occasionally take break at work. And if you do it, you will understand. If you don't practice it, you won't understand. It is when you practice what I'm saying, that is when you will understand the benefits that is in you taking break at work. Another thing that you need to do to cope with stress in the workplace is for you to seek support and professional help when the need arises. There is need for you to seek for professional help or to seek for support when the need arises. There is no shame in seeking for help. There is no shame. It is only stupidity that makes you think you don't need help sometimes. Every one of us, all the time, we need support. We need help. We need professional support. And don't be ashamed to seek for that when the need arises. And lastly, on the personal level of how to cope with stress in the workplace, I like to talk about you maintaining a positive outlook throughout the day. Always be positive. I can't remember any time when somebody asked me, "How is your day?" And I will answer, "My day is not bad," or "My is not," or "It's not very bad." I don't respond that way. When you ask me, "How is your day?" I tell you it's wonderful. I tell you it's great. That is how to maintain a positive outlook throughout the day. Not by saying, we are pushing it. Not by saying you are managing it. You know, those words have a way of bringing stress on your already stressed life. So one of the ways to unbottle yourself, to loosen yourself, is to be positive towards life. Maintain a positive outlook towards life. Now, at the organizational level, you know, Jennifer Moss spoke about stress not being about the work. It is not being about the workforce, but about the organization. Yes. And so, on the organizational level, what you need to do to cope with stress in the workplace is to encourage open communication. To encourage open communication. Uh, any organization where people have to gossip about one another, they have to gossip about their bosses, it's not really a safe place to work. There should be open and dynamic communication within an organization. Uh, any organization where everybody has to put their mouth in one corner to talk is not a safe place to work. So to cope with stress in the workplace, you want to encourage open communication. You want to have open door policy in your organization whereby anybody can talk to you irrespective of your position or your leadership status in the organization. Another thing that an organization can do to manage stress in the workplace is for the organization to provide resources. You need to provide resources that can help people. That is another thing we can do at the organizational level. Another thing we can do is to promote work-life balance. Don't let your workers work until they die on the work. We need to help them by promoting work-life balance. Don't let them be very great at work but poor managers at home. Let help them to be able to balance everything both at work and in their life, uh, in their other life outside the workplace. Another thing you can do to manage stress in the workplace at the organizational level is to recognize and reward employees. Recognize and reward employees. Just a little thank you note can be very can make a major impact on on employees, uh, especially when it's coming from their superior supervisor or manager. Another thing you can do at the organizational level to manage stress in the workplace is to foster a positive work culture. To foster a positive work culture. You know, in every organization, either even in a family, the culture, the kind of culture you have in that family or organization is very, very important. If you have a very bad culture in an organization, it will affect the productivity, the performance, and it will bring a lot of stress to the workers in that organization. So you want to foster a positive work culture in the organization. Another thing you can do to foster, another thing you can do to improve uh, stress, to improve stress in the workplace, the coping strategy at the organizational level is to develop a wellness program. I'm glad to share with you that at School of Transformational Leadership, we have a already designed wellness program. If you want to take the online version whereby you don't have to see us, we just send you videos of how you can watch those videos with your workers and then talk about it in the workplace. We have that already made. And if you also want us to do it, do a live session of those wellness, we call it executive wellness leadership program. If you want us to do a live session of, of it, we can also do it with current and relevant examples that may come up according to what is happening in our world today. We can also do that. Whichever choice that you want, we are here to serve you. I'm glad to let you know that we have such a provision at School of Transformational Leadership. So you want to help to develop a wellness program in your organization. Another thing you can do at the organizational level is to provide training and development opportunities. Training and development opportunities. Don't shy away from developing your staff. You know, your organization will be better off when you train and develop your staff than when you refuse to train them and develop them and retain them in your organization. And because you are thinking if you train and develop them, they might go to other organization. The cost of not training them and letting them to remain in your organization is far more is far more dangerous to the organization than you training them and losing them to another organization. So at least for the time they are in your organization, you will be rest assured that your investment in them will have a positive impact on your organization. Another thing you can do at the organizational level to manage stress in the workplace is to encourage employees' feedback. Let let there be an avenue for employees to be able to tell you what is happening in the workplace. When an employee cannot honestly talk to you as a manager or as a supervisor, it's a sign that there is problem in the workplace. So your employees must be able to talk to you about what their observation is and what they are going through in the workplace. Now, let's talk about the dark side of stress. I said it at the beginning, like uh, World Health Organization has helped us to clarify that stress is a killer occupational disease. Now, so because of that, I like us to examine some of the dark side of it so that when we see these things within our organization, we will know that these are the vital signs we need to check out for when somebody is going through stress in the workplace. Now, we're going to talk about some of the negative impact of stress on human performance in the workplace. That is one of the dark side of stress in the workplace. And then we're going to talk about it at the individual level, and then we're going to talk about the impacts it's going to have on the organizational level. Now, for individuals, stress can be noticed when people begin to experience fatigue and decreased energy. When you begin to see yourself always tired, you are tired of going to work, you are waking up, you are feeling you have slept for about 8 hours, still you are still feeling tired. These are proofs that you are going through stress. So, and then you want to do something about it. Another uh, Another negative impact of stress which can impact human performance in the workplace is that when you begin to have chronic headaches, some of us have experienced some of these things. I, for one, everything I'm sharing with you at one time or the other, I've experienced them in my life. But then, uh, with with my focus attention on wellness now, uh, occasionally when I see that happening, I quickly see what I can do to rectify some of the situation. Chronic headaches. When you continue to have serious headaches that you continue to use medication but they are not really leaving you, they are signs of stress in the workplace and it can significantly impact your performance in the workplace. When you continue to experience weakened immune system, that is one of the things that, even though stress is not a disease like virus or bacteria, it can also help lower your immune system if care is not taken. It can help lower, it can weaken your immune system if care is not taken. Another dark side of stress is that it can lead to decreased focus and concentration. You begin to feel distracted. You are not very focused in what you are doing. Uh, it's a sign that your human performance will be affected in the workplace. Another thing is that if you continue to experience memory lapses, forgetfulness, you begin to forget things. things that you should ordinarily remember, you forget them. There are signs, there are some of the negative impact of stress on our human performance in the workplace. Another thing is when you begin to experience decreased creativity, you are no longer creative at work, you are no longer able to solve problems. Your problem solving skill is not at its best, and you are not even creative for anything. It's a sign that you are being impacted with stress, and which can significantly affect your human performance in the workplace. Another thing is when you begin to make poor decisions, and when you begin to express poor decision making. When you make decision, you make it without without putting too much sense into what you are doing. Is a sign of stress. When your decision making ability is so poor that you yourself know that this is not the best that I should be able to produce, is a sign that you are being impacted with stress. Another thing is when you begin to experience mood swings, and when you begin to feel irritated with people, with things, with work, with your family, and when you begin to feel anxious and you begin to feel depressed, you feel like being alone all the time, they are all signs and negative impact of stress which can affect your human performance in the workplace. Another thing is when you begin to experience increased absenteeism and tardiness. You always come late to work, and it has become a regular routine. Every day you're always coming late to work. Some people don't see it as a problem, but it is. It is. It is a problem, and it's a sign that you are being stressed up at work because you are not finding joy in going to work. You rather wait a little bit and get late 30 minutes, 40 minutes before you get to work. It's a sign that you are being stressed out. When you continue to experience conflicts and communication breakdown, you are always fighting with A, you are fighting with employee B, you are fighting with employee C, everybody is always irritating you, you are always picking fight with everybody in your workplace, you cannot communicate well with people, uh, you feel people don't understand you when it is you not understanding people, is a sign that you are being impacted with stress in the workplace. When you continue to experience decreased motivation, reduced job satisfaction, and engagement at work, these are all vital signs that you need to watch out for as a sign of stress, which can impact your human performance in the workplace. Now, let me share one story with you, and then we go to the organizational impact, and then we conclude, we wrap up uh, this conversation. Sometimes ago, I think it was around November last year, or was it November, October last year? Uh, I was my blood pressure was really on the high side, and my doctor was concerned. I was concerned myself. I tried my best to control it, but it wasn't. It wasn't really. It wasn't. I wasn't really getting the best of results. But then I needed to make a journey to Indianapolis on a particular weekend, and and come back the same day so that I can be available for my church service, being a pastor in my church the following day, because I don't like to miss my church service for anything. I always love to be there, no matter what the situation is. I always love to be in church every Sunday. So I could have decided to stay over on Sunday and come back maybe later that Sunday, but I decided to go on that day and then return back on that same day. But one thing I did when I was going to Indianapolis was that throughout the journey, to go from Boston to Indianapolis will take you roughly about 3 hours if it is direct flight. But if you happen to have a stopover in another place or the other, the journey can be significantly higher than that. So I think I had stopover on both occasions, my to and fro. So what happened was that the moment I got into the plane, usually I don't usually sleep when I'm in the plane. It's either I'm reading or mostly it's either I'm reading. I have to be able to engage myself with something. I love to do that a lot. But this time around, I wasn't going to read. I just decided to take a nap. And all through the journey from Boston, and even when we had stopovers, all through my time in the plane, I slept all through. And when I was returning, I have never had that kind of sleep in my life. And this is not even a sleep that is convenient. You can imagine you sleeping on the chair in the plane, but it was so deep that it was one of the best experiences I had in my life. And you know something? The moment, because I could see the effect of the sleep on my body when I returned to Boston. And the moment I decided to check my BP again, I saw something that I have never seen before. My BP drastically reduced to normal. Everything became normal. And I told my wife, I said, it seems what I've been lacking all this while is a good sleep. Can you imagine going from Boston to Indianapolis, sleeping all the way through, and then coming back, sleeping your way through, and then normally you are supposed to be stressed up because of the journey, but because I had time to sleep in the plane, by the time I was checking my blood pressure, it became normal. And that is how some of these things can be very, very important. When you are not having a good sleep, it's a sign that you are stressed out. Not having good sleep can make you to be stressed up. So you want to pay attention to some of these vital signs that are upward in your system. Now let's talk about the organizational impacts of the dark side of stress on human performance in the workplace. The organizational impact, like I told you earlier on, when somebody is stressed, it's not only that person that suffers, the organization also suffers. And so we want to look at the, the suffering or the punishment that the organization will receive when your workers or your employees are going through stress. Number one, the organization will experience decreased productivity and performance. They will experience decreased productivity and performance. Number two, it will lead to increased turnover and absenteeism. I told you at the beginning that a little measure of turnover is usually good for an organization, but when it becomes high, when the turnover rate becomes too much, then it becomes detrimental to the organization. So that is one of the negative consequence of stress in the workplace. People will begin to move in and out of the organization, particularly when the working condition is not so conducive. People will quickly be moving out as often as they can. Another negative impact on the organization is that it can have a very bad impact on the organization's culture, on the company's culture. And if there is anything that every organization needs to protect, it is the kind of culture that they allow in their organization. But when stress is not managed very well, it can significantly impact the culture of the organization. And of course, lastly, it can lead to increased healthcare costs. It can lead to increased healthcare costs. Now, let me wrap up by saying that in today's podcast, which focuses on how to handle stress in the workplace, I want to say that we have together, I believe we are partner in this, we have together focused on burnout and stress management in the workplace, because that is where most of us will spend about 1/3 of our lifetime. Believe me honestly, you spend more time at work than you spend at home. And that is why it is important for us to talk about the stress and burnout that workers experience in the workplace. That is where we spend 1/3 of our life. And if we cannot take care of where we spend the 1/3 of our life, then we are at a greater risk of functioning maximally in life. And again, another fun fact is that roughly 58% of people are working globally today, according to Statista. The radical implication of this is that we cannot avoid talking about what is going on in the workplace, because most of us, like I said, will spend the most significant chunk of our life working in the labor market. Now, I have come to the end of this podcast, and I trust that you have been blessed and you have enjoyed everything that we have shared together. I don't just want you to listen to this podcast. I want you to put it to work, practice it. Take the lessons you have learned in this podcast and put it to work in your life, and you will see the difference. I'd like you to continue to engage with us on all our other podcasts, and I'd like you to continue to share and like and comment on all our podcasts. God bless you. See you next month.